Hello, I'm Sarah Eckerstorfer. Today I will be talking about my summer research, which focused on family mealtimes and their associations with cultural identity development on mother-adolescent dyads, or pairs, in Jamaica. I first became interested in family mealtime research after reading an article published by Gray and Ferguson in 2018. This article showed how quality and quantity of mealtimes is related to health outcomes in the family. Having grown up in a multicultural household, I used food to be a primary way to connect to my family's cultures. For this reason, I wanted to examine the association between mealtimes and cultural identity development. Using the cultural health and family life study data collected by Dr. Ferguson, I was able to examine the family mealtime and cultural identity in mother-adolescents in Jamaica. I focus on the Jamaican population as they are a country in close proximity to the United States. In addition to this, they have continually become influenced by European American culture as the world becomes more globalized through a process called remote acculturation. Remote acculturation is defined as a process of indirect cultural influence on individual cultures through technology, transnationalism, trade, and tourism. Quality and quantity are the two main areas of focus within mealtime research. Quality, in this case, refers to priority, structure, and atmosphere of the mealtime. Items used to assess priority include: it is important that our family eat meal together, difficult schedules make it hard to eat together, and it is difficult to find time for a family meal. Similarly, items for atmosphere included mealtime enjoyment and positive communication during the shared mealtime. Finally, the three items used for structure refer to the expectations of the family members at dinner and if the television are on. And this can be seen on this graph, sorted into three areas: priority, atmosphere, and structure. Quantity, the second part of the family mealtimes, refers to the number of times families are able to gather to eat throughout the day. It was seen that Jamaican families gather on average 3 times a week for shared mealtimes. For this study, I proposed 3 hypotheses. First, after controlling for social economic status and child age, I predicted that there would be a positive correlation between the quality of family mealtimes and the mother-adolescent Jamaican identity. Second, I predicted a positive correlation between the strength of the mother's Jamaican cultural identity and that of the Jamaican adolescent's cultural identity. Lastly, after controlling for child age and socioeconomic status, I predicted that there would be a negative correlation between aspects of family mealtimes and the American cultural identity of Jamaican youths and mothers. To measure this, 330 adolescent mother dyads completed a questionnaire. Adolescents came from 3 traditional government-run secondary schools in Kingston, Jamaica, and were from grades 7th through 10th grade. Mealtime quality was measured using the Family Mealtime Questionnaire. Cultural identity was measured using the Language, Identity, and Behavior Acculturation Scale, focusing on Identity Acculturation subscale. The responses to this measure were rated on a 4-point Likert scale, ranging from 1, not at all, to 4, very much. I saw that there was significant correlation between 3 aspects of the adolescent Jamaican identity. These variables included the number of times the family had a meal each week, the importance the families placed on eating mealtimes together, and the feeling that mealtimes are a good time for talking. When looking at the structure of the mealtimes, there was significant correlation between mother Jamaican identity and the expectations for their children to follow rules at mealtimes and the importance of manners at the dinner table. All other correlations between mother and adolescent Jamaican identity and aspects of family mealtime were not significant. For my second hypothesis, the Jamaican orientation of mothers was closely associated with that of adolescents. This implies that adolescents and parents share similar expectations and cultural values. This is also supported by past literature. Finally, sadly, my third hypothesis was not supported. There is no significant correlation between the family mealtimes and the American identity. This means that family mealtimes in the sample were not closely associated with American identity. It was predicted that a television present at mealtime would be related to the cultural identity development, but the data showed that there was no correlation between these 2 variables. Similarly, different schedules were predicted to be significantly related to the American identity, but that too was not related. With this research, I hope to help parents encourage cultural identity development and understanding within their children. The world is becoming more interconnected. Identity development is often a neglected area of development, and if it is not addressed by parents, it may cause psychological stress in their children who are being raised in a bicultural world. Mealtimes are one of the only shared worldwide activities, and using this time to its greatest potential will allow for communities to flourish and support their coming generations in any additional way. I just want to thank the entire MSROP group, including Vicky and Heidi, and the support I've gotten from the cohort has been an amazing experience. And I also want to thank my mentors, Dr. Gail Ferguson, Lauren Eels, and Sarah Gillespie, who have supported me and held me accountable and taught me so much about research this summer. It has been such a growing experience for me. I also want to thank my friends who all showed up, and my siblings and my parents. And thank you for everyone. This has been a great experience.
Thank you, Sarah. Really nice job. So how about some questions for Sarah?
This is such a fantastic project and so interesting to me. How do you define or how do you conceptualize like American identity generally? Do you draw on specific literature, draw on a specific definition, or how do you define it?
I would define it more as an individualistic society. So in my research paper that I wrote for this project, I have Jamaican identity more leaning towards like a collectivist society because they've had influence by their indigenous population and by the African culture. So I'd say that the more American identity is more saying like, oh, you want to set yourself apart and having more like self-focused goals rather than like community-based goals.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Hey Sarah, do you think that the type of food eaten would have any type of impact, like having traditional cultural food versus eating like fast food or just store-bought food?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. In past research done with the same set of data, they've looked at how using remote acculturation, which was having like the television on, has influenced the type of food that they consume. So it's seen that families that often have that on often more consume fast food. And so yeah, and just based off personal experience too, I feel like that eating cultural like dishes often like allows you to connect more with the culture, and just being able to like talk and discuss like the processes that go into certain types of food. And yeah.
Thanks.
Hey Sarah, this is Kira again. I'm really excited about this project, and I'm happy to kind of have seen some pieces of it through the lab's work, but it was really great to kind of see this all put together and lay out your hypotheses. I'm curious as to kind of what your next steps are and kind of what you're interested in looking at next. So if you're really interested in kind of predictors of cultural identity and kind of how acculturation might be shaping that, if mealtime kind of cohesion isn't predicting it, what are you looking at next for like other main predictors or other things that you're really interested in exploring?
Yeah, so I've talked about this with Dr. Ferguson too, about looking at how socioeconomic status may play an effect, because in past literature it has seen that those with lower income often have a harder time gathering for meals due to other time constraints, because they often are working more, they might come from single family households. So hopefully in the future I'll be able to add this onto my research and be able to delve deeper into it and just see how more variables are able to affect and influence cultural identity development.
Nice, thank you.
Yeah, thank you too.
Hi, Sarah. I see that you have rules listed in mealtime structure as well. Are there examples of which cultural identity plays into specific rules at the dinner table that you found?
Based off of the data set, I am more leaning towards like the rules were being like the expectations and like how they are more structured. And so like expectations, and so like making sure they were, I guess like Dr. Ferguson, you might be able to explain this more, but just like how they're being able to respect and like listen to other family members. And in other areas, I know that rules were related to who got their food first and who was like talked to more and who got more of like the discussion during the mealtime. That answers the question.
Yes, thank you.
I'm sorry, I have one more question. This is just really interesting to like my own research, so I'm just wondering. So meal times are obviously a thing to kind of make your cultural identity, but have you thought of any other kind of like similar situations, kind of like a church group, like that you like did donuts after church, or like similar things where people share food, but it's not a mealtime to build that kind of cultural identity? Obviously, it's a different project, but I'm just wondering if you had any thoughts around that.
Yeah, I definitely have thought about that too, because like I grew up going to Filipino parties all the time with my family, and so that's been like a huge way that I've connected to like my Filipino culture, and just like being surrounded by like people that speak Tagalog, which is the native language, and speaking or like just hanging out with like kids that I raised in the same type of environment as I am is just like a big way that I've been able to connect and like reset and share food. And so again, like I mentioned really briefly in my intro that like this is a big way that I've been drawn into mealtime, and it's definitely something that could be looked into in the future.